You are now watching a True Knicks Talk podcast post-game show live with your host, CP.
What's up, everyone? It's your boy CP here with the True Knicks Talk post-game live show here with the very last post-game of the season. Obviously, here we're talking about a 109-130 loss in Game 7 against the Indiana Pacers. Not too sure if Nick's going to be joining me here today, but nonetheless, we are here talking about this Knicks game that really does frustrate me, but I will get into some of just the overall X's and O's of the game. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about the overall vibe of this New York Knicks team heading into the offseason, all that good stuff. But before we get into it, as always, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Hit the live chat with your thoughts and opinions. Obviously, this is a very sort of gloomy stream after just being eliminated, but nonetheless, we do have to keep the positivity because this Knicks team will be back. And I know it's hard to keep the positivity. It's hard because we have a whole entire offseason ahead of us. There will be moves for this team to make, and the personnel will be a little bit different, and we'll get into that a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how to foreshadow the moves, but hit that thumbs up and hit the live chat as well, and subscribe. You know where to find me on all my social medias at CPNYSports. Okay. Appreciate you all being here as well. Hollywood Ray, can't wait for this one. The Celtics-Knicks matchup that we all wanted. Was hoping to get Hollywood Ray back onto this show. Obviously, going back to Game 1, Celtics-Knicks of this 2023-2024 season, I had Hollywood Ray previewing that game up on here on the big screen here, but just couldn't happen. It just wasn't destined to be. It just felt like this was destined to be a Pacers Celtics final. And I don't say that because obviously here to start this season or to start this series, obviously I had very high hopes. But you look at what transpired today in Game 7. The Pacers had one of the most historic shooting games that I've seen and that I think this league has seen in the history of elimination games in the playoffs. And you have the team stats here. Obviously, I'm not going to prop up the box scores. I have one stat sheet, one slide to show you all, and this is it. The Pacers shooting over 67% from the field. Now, that was a combination of the New York Knicks playing horrendous defense, and I'll get into that here in just a second because there are a lot of gripes that I had with this defense today. But also, the Pacers just taking whatever looks and whatever feel they had in Indiana, where it just seemed like there was going to be no lid on the basket for Indiana, and they transferred that over to MSG. When you talk about a series where Indiana, up until Game 7, looked like two completely different teams at home versus on the road, that was the one hope that I was clinging on to here in Game 7, and obviously it didn't transpire. This was a very, very weak performance by the New York Knicks defensively. Now, I know that's not what a lot of people hear. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that Deuce McBride didn't show up on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of people and a lot of Knicks fans will probably tell you first and foremost, and I am one of those Knicks fans as well, that the injury plague that hit the Knicks, obviously there's nothing you can do about that. But we're here talking about this team objectively, and when you realize what personnel you're going to Game 7 with, the injury excuses are out the window, at least for the time being. Now, we can sit back and look at this series, obviously being impacted by no OG Anunoby, no Bogey, no etc., no Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson obviously dealing with the foot and then now the fractured hand midway through the game. We could talk about that in hindsight. But when this game is being played, the softness and the lack of intensity that I saw this team come out with in Game 7 was a little disappointing, especially in front of the home crowd. It was a little bit disappointing. So just wanted to say that first and foremost. Jeremy's saying, when I look at Rick Carlisle, all I can think of him as a Celtic. It's no wonder I can't stand him or his present team. I don't blame you, man. Rick Carlisle obviously giving the Knicks all the credit in the world to begin the series. We know about the 78 calls that were sent into the league. It is what it is. He's a good coach. I'll say this. I can't take anything away from Rick Carlisle because he got his guys ready to play. His team was in a 3-2 deficit after that game 5 that the New York Knicks absolutely just took it to the Indiana Pacers, and he got his team ready in both elimination games for them, game 6 and game 7. So not going to take anything away from Rick Carlisle as a coach. But yeah, it's a little frustrating. I hear you, Jeremy. Josh is saying, I literally got on my hands and knees this morning praying for a Knicks-Celtics matchup. And honestly, I think the Pacers are going to lose to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals anyways. And I think the Knicks would have by virtue of the personnel that the Knicks had available. So I think that the Celtics are going to advance to the finals no matter what. And they would have done so even if the Knicks found a way to win this game 7. But you know my objective thoughts about this, Josh. Hopefully your Nuggets get it done tonight in that pivotal game 7 against the Timberwolves. I'll be tuning into that one as well. So wishing you luck. Shout out to you, Daniel Barry. Appreciate you always, always, always. I appreciate everybody in these comment sections. Keep on hitting the live chat. Let me know as Knicks fans what you feel, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Are you positive going into the offseason? Do you think that this is a win, regardless of how this ended up for the New York Knicks? Let me know in the comment section. And we have Robert chiming into the chat here as well. So disappointing if OG and Hart were fully healthy. It would have been a different ballgame. I agree with you. Robert, 100%. In hindsight, we can definitely say that. But in game 7, we knew what the deal was. And this is a perfect segue here to get my man Nick up on and talk about this game 7 loss. So I kind of was going into a little bit of the comments, Nick. I was talking about the lack of intensity and the lack of a defensive performance here early on in this game, especially in the first quarter, combined with the historic Indiana Pacers shooting here, as you can see on your screen. Just lay it out all on the line, man. This is the last post-game stream of the 2023-2024 season before we're back for the 2024-2025 season. We have a whole offseason ahead of us. Lay it on the line. The floor is yours, man.
I think you hit it right on the head. First and foremost, coming out of the gate, we weren't the level of intensity and up in these guys like we needed to be. And when you let a young team that's a front-running team that, is the highest scoring team in the league, when you let them start to get going, now all of a sudden it's that snowball effect where it's rolling downhill. And they did okay. Now on top of that, they did also have just an unbelievable night shooting the ball. There was times where it was just like, can they miss it? Like there were shots where it's just like, okay, this one's gonna miss. Like they got to miss this one, and they just kept hitting everything. But it was way too many easy all the way to the basket. Threes that were somewhat wide open. They were dictating on offense. I thought to start off the second half, we did a better job of, listen, man, they are all over us every time we try to give Brunson the ball. They're fouling him. They're doing that. They're always trying to swipe with the ball. We have to do the same thing. But I thought there was a combination of a lack of defensive intensity, and then there was also just a lack of forcefulness and taking care of the ball. In the second half, when we got it back, when we got it all the way down to 6, what happened was we then turned the ball over 2 times in a row. Hartenstein probably had his worst game of the series, maybe his worst game of the playoffs. He was just doing just very lackadaisical with the ball sometimes. Like this guy, TJ McConnell, we know what he's supposed to do. We know what he does, and we're just letting him do those things. We're letting him slap at the ball. We know we're letting him lay the ball up and take these little short jump shots. And sometimes it's just like we seem like we're a step slow, and it's like, okay, he's about to do this right now. Like, why are we playing into that? So it was just frustrating on all accounts. And then with all that being said, you can't expect a team to be able to do anything when they, end up having all of the injuries that this team suffered. OG comes back in, he gets those first 2 buckets, but you could tell as soon as he was on the floor, he was useless as far as defensively. He's not going to be able to do anything. You can't just park him in the corner. So we had to get him out of the game. And Josh Hart was not himself. And, this team, as much as we kept fighting back and with the next man up, attitude, once Josh Hart got hurt in that last game and him all in this entire game, not being able to make the impact that he typically can, we just didn't have a chance. We didn't have a shot. I honestly think that we sweep him if OG never gets hurt. We were rolling at that point. Everything was going great, but that's what happens, man. And, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but there's some things that we need to do in this offseason. I don't think we need to make huge moves, but we do need to do a few things to be able to sustain and get to the promised land. If that's what, we obviously should go into next season, hoping and expecting that we can do.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that here before we close this stream out today. Dude, listen, and you texted me earlier today, and you were like excited because we got the news that Hart and Anunoby were expected to play. Man, like I said, Hart, I knew he was going to play. That was hands down not an option for Josh Hart not to play, right? And absolute warrior, obviously only going 3 of 9 from the field, obviously laboring. That abdominal strain is like weeks of recovery, and he did a short turnaround for 2 days and came out and played in this matinee. So warrior, I know the performance wasn't really what we expected and what we really needed, but nonetheless, him being out there just shows that just New York toughness, man. He's wearing number 3. The guy that came on the podcast, Mr. John Starks, always talking about him and that resemblance of the toughness, right? Man, listen, hats off not only to Josh Hart, hats off to Dante DiVincenzo, bro. Hats off to Dante DiVincenzo. What, 37 to 39 points, almost dropped the 40 burger, was keeping this team in the ball game, especially in the middle parts of that ball game. Nobody else around him seemed like they wanted to help him offensively. And Jalen Brunson as well. I agree with you. That was one of my biggest gripe was, and this was even going back to like game 3 or 4, right, in Indiana, where the Knicks had lost their first game of the series. I just took a look at the efficiency of both teams' offenses, and that really wasn't sustainable to me. To have Brunson carry the ball at the top of the key and for him to get doubled and dump it off to somebody, and for them not to be like, the off-ball movement was just bad for me. Like, I didn't see much off-ball movement, especially in this game. So when you took a look at the efficiency in which the Pacers got their offense, whether it was in the half court, right, with the lack of pressure, the lack of double teams, the lack of just intensity in general, or on the run in transition, and which happened a couple times today, it just seemed like the offenses, and obviously in hindsight, I wasn't looking at that and just making that note in game 3 or 4, but definitely in game 6, it was very evident. But nonetheless, couple of players here. As soon as I saw Pascal Siakam, this is like a brain dump for me. This is a brain dump of a post game right now. Like, all my thoughts are just whirling, and I just got to get it out. As soon as I saw Pascal Siakam go 5 for 5, I was like, all right, we're in trouble. They were laying off of Pascal Siakam. The first shot that he took of the game was that mid-range that he absolutely torched the Knicks on in game 6. Made it, I think, his 5th shot of the game to make him go 5 for 5 was a 3-pointer. And at that point, I was like, all right, this guy's here to play. Precious Achiuwa wasn't getting it done. Not getting it done. This is a guy, obviously, we're kind of questioning whether he was going to get consistent or rotational minutes in the playoffs before the injury started to really accumulate for the New York Knicks. And Deuce McBride. We talked about Deuce McBride potentially being that X factor. He didn't show. He really, besides that game that he started in this series, that he put up 17, I believe it was, in game 5. He didn't show up this series. And the Knicks really.
TJ McConnell outplayed him, and we said before the series, McConnell can't outplay him, and that's what happened. I mean, listen, man, it's there's a lot to be said, and I mean, I just the one thing that I just think is such a we've talked about this many times, but the one thing that I think is just such a silly, lazy bullshit narrative is this narrative that somehow Tibbs played these guys too many minutes, and that's what led to all these injuries. I don't know how the starters playing too many minutes hurting this team, according to Aaron Blue Shirts Banter. The question I would ask him is Julius Randle getting low bridged by Jaquez? How exactly is that due to him playing too many minutes? OG Anunoby, an oft injured player, pulling a hamstring during his 28th minute of a game. I don't understand exactly how that's supposed to be Tom Thibodeau's a fault or something about us playing too many minutes. And Jalen Brunson hitting his hand on somebody's knee, or Josh Hart taking a weird, like, early in the game, again, taking some weird thing happening. You can't say that these are some sort of like cumulative effect things, like, oh, they played so much. Also, it's just statistics. Jalen Brunson was 12th in minutes per game in a league, and he led our team. So the narrative, Luka plays more minutes. All these guys, everybody that's up at the top of those, it's really good players, obviously, because those are the guys that play a ton of minutes. And the Paul George thing, as far as wanting to get him, I don't know who in our starting lineup that we would want to give up, or who we would want to demote to put Paul George in. Because if you want to stick with OG, you want to stick with Julius. You're saying DiVincenzo. I don't know. To me personally, especially with Paul George having the injury history that he does, I'm much more confident going into next season with DiVincenzo as my starting two guard than Paul George, especially having to give up anything of significance for Paul George, whether that be picks or definitely not any players. So I just think that the whole, we ran out of gas, but it's not like we ran out of gas because we were just too tired. We also just had an uncanny rash of injuries, freak injuries. I mean, accumulating tonight with Brunson breaking his hand on what seemed like a very, play that wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know. I don't know. I honestly, I feel like you're the type of person who thinks like, oh, we got to get Paul George, or I mean, even like, we need another star like Donovan Mitchell. I feel like you don't watch this team and you don't know basketball, because we had 25, 10, and 4 sitting on the bench since January. I mean, who are these players that are going to have the impact that Julius Randle is going to consistently have? We have to just hope for health. And, at the end of the day, bringing in these guys. Okay, by the way, Paul George and Donovan Mitchell, both oft injured guys. So I don't understand when people think that that's the answer. And, I don't want to hear any Tibbs slander and act as if this is somehow because he plays his guys too much. I don't know who else they wanted us to play. Did they want Shake Milton and Daquan Jeffries to get more minutes?
So this is the thing that I have to say about all of that. First of all, I am looking at the regular season 2023-2024 minutes in this season right now from ESPN. They actually had Jalen Brunson at 4th, not 12th.
Minutes per game or minutes total?
Minutes per game at 30, unless I'm looking at that wrong.
Is it?
No, I was looking at that.
Is it including the playoffs?
You're right. It was minutes total. So you're right. Yes. So not minutes per game. So it wasn't the average. So you're right. And then you're right there. So 12. There you go. So
if you're fifth in MVP voting, you're gonna be top 5 in minutes.
Yeah. So let me look at who's ahead of him. So let me look at who's ahead of him in this category. Minutes, you have Luka Doncic is over him. You've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously like right neck and neck. Jalen Brunson averaged a tad bit more. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, De'Aaron Fox, all these guys playing more minutes on average than Jalen Brunson. And so what I think that people are trying to say with that, which I don't buy into that narrative, and as soon as that game was done, I actually was defending myself in my friend group chat, because all these Wizards fans want to come at me and say, oh, Dave's playing the guys too many minutes. Oh, look at Derrick Rose. I was like, I did the same thing you did. You look at all the freak injuries that the Knicks had this year that wasn't really attributed to the accumulation of those excessive minutes. Now, I think a lot of people are going with that thought, and I think Aaron might be. I don't want to speak for Aaron. Shout out to you being here, by the way, Aaron. And we'll get into all the chats here in just a second as well. What I think that most people are saying is that the playoff minutes, especially Josh Hart playing 4 games or whatever it was, 3 games in a row without coming out. But I agree with you. Like, would you rather put Precious Achiuwa in high leverage minutes in round 1 and potentially just lose the series versus just win the series and have this guy be out there for however much long he could be out there for? And he didn't want to come out of the ball game anyways. Like, is anybody asking what these players think of that as well? Which they were in the pregame, and they thought it was nonsense as well. I forgot it was in the tail end of the 76ers series or this series, but I think it's a little bit overplayed. I don't know, man. This is going to be like the thing is that what's frustrating for me about this type of post game right now is that now people are going to just be like, oh, it's the minutes. Like, and they were already saying that before, but now they have more fuel to the fire because the Knicks are actually eliminated now, which is fine because we stand on business and we obviously combat those sort of narratives and those sort of takes. Now, I'm not saying that they are necessarily wrong, although that's what I am saying. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and it's not just a one-size-fits-all type answer. That's all I'm going to say. And this is going to be a thing as long as Tom Thibodeau is the coach of the New York Knicks. We better be prepared for this because they're talking about extensions now for Tom Thibodeau, which I'm on board for. I think you're on board for. So this is going to be a thing for seasons to come. Now, as it comes to the star players, and we're going to get into that here in just a second, but I really want to talk about this game some more. But nonetheless, we'll talk about this here in a second. As it comes to like Paul George or Donovan Mitchell, the way I look at it is, and shout out to Joel C. Shout out to my man Ricardo as well in the chat. Tough loss, great season though. Salute to the Knicks. Absolutely appreciate you, Ricardo, being here. The one thing that I say, and I think that Dante DiVincenzo, obviously, and you look at the season that he had, it was a great season. From him starting off on the bench to being a full-time starter now, especially after the Quentin Grimes trade. Even before the Quentin Grimes trade, he was already a starter. I think that he probably would be that player if the Knicks brought in a two-guard, which is what if someone made a point of what the Knicks need in this entirety of the roster, that's the only thing that fans could say is the Knicks could upgrade the two-guard position. Do they need it? Do they need it, though? It's a thing about need versus want. That's what it comes down to me.
I don't think that's the upgrade, though. I don't think that's the upgrade.
So what would be the upgrade? Because you got to pay OG, and he's not going to get paid to sit on the bench.
The upgrade is not in our starting five. Our starting five, you leave it alone. The upgrade is the fact that we need more long-rangey wing 3-4 type players that can hit a three, that can come off the bench. We need like if you look at this game, you watch this game in particular, and a guy like Naismith, the fact that he's able to just hit a mid-range shot, he can hit a three, he can get all the way to the rim and lay the ball up with guys with guys around him and in traffic in the game. We need more guys that can do stuff like that. We need that's what our, when it comes to the draft, we have 2 first-round picks. When it comes to free agency, I don't know exactly who's going to be available, but even like a guy like I was watching that game with Dallas yesterday. We need like a guy like a PJ Washington coming off our bench. We need a guy that can come off, and we need obviously health for Mitch. Like, we could have so used Mitch's athleticism at the rim in this series, like that and that's the thing. You start to look at a guy like Mitch and you say, hey man, this guy's hurt every year. He's had multiple surgeries on his lower extremities since he's been on the Knicks. Can you really continue to count on this guy to be able to be healthy and then be healthy specifically in the playoffs? Julius is typically a warrior, but this is 2 years in a row where he's gotten hurt. Now, they've both been like freak type injury, dirty Miami Heat bullshit. But like at the end of the day, hey, we need Julius to have now he's been an Iron Man mostly. So I'm not going to say like, I'm nervous about, Julius when it comes to his availability. But I just, now listen, Brunson just broke his shooting hand. So, how long does that take to heal? How long does what does that do to his offseason routine? There's going to be a lot of questions, but I honestly think when it comes to what we need to add, if we could get Devin Booker somehow, and that's, I'm saying without giving up a ton, I'm not willing to give up Deuce, Dante, and all the picks. No, if we can give up a bunch of picks or some shit like that and maybe sprinkle in a Deuce, even though I would like to keep Deuce, but if we could do something like that and get a guy like Booker back, then yeah, okay, you do that. But other than that, I mean, Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, I'm not giving anything up for them. I'm not giving up anything of significance for them when it comes to players. And I would be only so many picks I would give up for them. And they're both injured all the time. That's not what I'm trading. I'm not trading for a guy who has an injury history. That's the last thing that we need.
I agree with you. So this is where I'm going to say that Deuce, like, you look at a Pacers team that has just now made the Eastern Conference Finals with, you can say maybe 2 dominant ball players, like 2 dominant, like on-ball players in Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton. Would I even classify both of them as ball dominant? No, but nonetheless, that's what they would equate. And that is it's Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. And they just made the Eastern Conference Finals. So you're telling me that a team comprised of Julius Randle, when he's healthy, and Jalen Brunson can't do the same thing? Now, you're right. You look at the difference in what they had coming off the bench, right? Look at the field goals. Just look at the box score of what they had coming off their bench, especially TJ McConnell. And look at what the bench for the Knicks did this entire series, or lack thereof, because they didn't really do much besides Alec Burks here, obviously, in this last game. I agree with you. I definitely do agree with you. If it came down to getting a Donovan Mitchell or a Devin Booker, I was entertaining the Paul George talk to begin the season last season, but now looking at the current state of this team, I'm not entertaining that anymore. I simply am not. I don't need a Paul George. I'll take a Devin Booker, but I don't need a Paul George. This is what I'll say. DiVincenzo can't go anywhere. I agree with you. Deuce McBride can't go anywhere because that's just depleting your bench now at this point. Unless you obviously move Dante DiVincenzo to that bench, I agree with you. But you would need more than one or two bodies on the bench. If this playoff series told you anything, it's just that.
But when we're healthy, our bench is great. Keep that in mind. That's the thing about that. When we're actually healthy, and Josh Hart is a bench player, and you like that. Our bench was dominant early on in this season until we started getting hurt. So that's the thing. We really just gotta send everybody down to Canal Street and have somebody do some sort of special prayer and some smoke with some sound bowls on the guys or something like that. And let's just get these guys healthy or something. The thing is that like our bench is deep when we're healthy, but we still I think need to add some youth that is just long. We need long youth, like guys who can get out, who can run, who can finish at the rim. We need a couple more guys like that.
I want to get like an Orlando Magic-esque length on this team, to be honest with you. And the size played a key factor in this series as well. You look at Miles Turner, you look at Pascal Siakam. I mean, there was really at some point, and even Obi Toppin, I hate giving Obi Toppin credit because everybody likes to cling on to this narrative that the Knicks should have never let go of Obi, et cetera, et cetera. You know those select fan base and that select group of Knicks Twitter users over there on that app. But nonetheless, the length just absolutely gave the Knicks fits. And in the regular season, the same thing with the Orlando Magic, because we know the Magic beat the Knicks a couple of times throughout the regular season. Like, that's what gave the Knicks fits. Now, the Knicks did a great job all season long and really all playoffs long, especially in that 76ers series, sort of, even if you were outmatched in the length category, just being the more physical and the more aggressive team. And that's just the culture that's been instilled now. But I'm looking at the comment section here. We're talking about upgrades, and it'll be a whole off season of talk on this channel about upgrades. Obviously, it's some news. Whatever comes out with the Knicks moves, we'll be on here talking about it in one way, shape, or another. But everybody that's been mentioning here and that's been mentioned in the comment section is injury prone, maybe outside of Devin Booker. Like Joel Embiid, injury prone. Paul George, injury prone. Donovan Mitchell, injury prone. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't take any one of those guys because I certainly would. But like you're saying, I agree with you. It's going to have to be for the right price. And are those respective teams going to let those players go for the right price that Leon Rose wants? The answer is probably not, because there's only so much magic Leon Rose can work with when he's not dealing with the Detroit Pistons. Let's be real here. Let's be real. So yeah, I appreciate everybody in the chat though. The opinions are great, because this is the great thing about this now that we're eliminated from the playoffs, is that everybody has their own different opinions on how this team can improve. And you know what? I'm here for it, because you guys, this is as much of an event session as it is talking about the actual X's and O's of the game or the offseason. But nonetheless, I want to get back into this game here real quick, because something that didn't sit right with me. Tom Thibodeau, great coach, would be happy to have an extension. What really pissed me off today was he kept Alec Burks on the bench for a little bit longer than I would have hoped, especially when the Knicks cut it to like 6 in that third quarter and Deuce McBride has a pivotal turnover. By the way, Jalen Brunson's injury, did that come off the Deuce McBride turnover or his own turnover? I'm curious. Because that was a transition where they locked
it. It was off his own turnover. It
was off his own, right? Okay, that's what I figured.
Deuce turnover was right before that.
You can't have that, man. You can't have that.
Horrible. It was horrible. Yeah, no, it was horrible. And honestly, like, I said to my dad at halftime, I said, do we start Alec Burks as the 2 to start the second half, or do we come back with Deuce? And I get going back to Deuce because that's what we've done and it's worked so well. But at the same time, like, I mean, listen, I don't think we should. Alec Burks played a ton of minutes and he played well. Obviously, Alec Burks was, probably our best player today. We just didn't have enough. I gotta address Ricardo, saying that, the only problem with Tibbs is that you'll never discover any diamonds in the rough because he was unwilling to play unestablished players. I mean, guy, like, it's just, I hate when there's arguments that are just like, you've heard some narrative and you've heard somebody say something, but you're not paying any real attention to what's happening, because this year he had how many players have career years that they've and play like they've never played before? Hartenstein, Deuce McBride, Precious Achiuwa, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, all of those guys had career years this year under Tibbs. They're much better. They're all they all played themselves to either being way better than their actual contracts. Brunson has done the same under Tibbs as well. It's just It's just a argument with zero merit.
So this is where I see the fork in the road here, in terms of where the Knicks can go. They can either go out and get that star and then obviously push whoever it is on the bench. You still have to re-sign OG Anunoby, by the way. So he's still an impending free agent. You still got to re-sign him. You can go two ways. You can get that star, like everyone's saying in the chat, or like Aaron is saying here, and like you're saying here, Nick, as well, you can just hold on to those picks that you would trade for that star, keep and rock with the same starting five, right? With Josh Hart being on the bench and just keep Julius Randle out there in the starting five. And then you can just use one of those draft picks to sort of go against that finding a player in the rough narrative and just using those draft picks to get on the bench and help out this bench. Does that make any sense to you at all? Like, would you just hold on to those draft picks, use those draft picks to just potentially bolster your bench, or would you still flip those draft picks in one way or another for bench type pieces?
My thing is this, and I mean, I saw that you put like Mikal Bridges would be awesome. Everything, when all these people we talk about, it's like, what are you willing to give up?
Yeah.
What are you willing to give up? Because I'm not, I'm not moving anybody in our starting five. I'm not trading them plus anything for Mikal Bridges. I've seen people say stuff about like Julius is so much better than Mikal Bridges, in my opinion. And Mikal Bridges is not what we need. We don't, if Mikal Bridges is willing to come to the Knicks and come and play off the bench, then sure, that's great. But then what are you giving up? You know that they've already turned down offers of like multiple first round picks. So I'm not giving that up either. Like I said, I am holding. If Devin Booker wants to come, that's one of the few people that I'm giving up all this stuff for. Everybody else, it's like, yo, you just chill. You just chill. You get guys back healthy. You add bench players, and you continue to see what this team can be. We've done that's the smart thing that we've done. We didn't give it all up for Donovan Mitchell, who we went and knocked out of the playoffs the next year, and the next year his team got knocked out of the playoffs with him sitting on the bench in street clothes. We just need to sign a couple bench pieces. We need to move some things. We have to re-sign our own guys. We have a lot of guys of our own guys that we're going to have to re-sign. So we got to let the dust settle with all that and see exactly how everything's going to be affected as far as the cap. The NBA cap is impossible to understand. So I don't even try to understand it until somebody at some point, like Woj or whatever, decides to let us go and let us know. And then after that, we add some bench pieces and we continue to do what we've done, which is add the right type of players, Tibbs type of guys. You don't just this is not NBA Live, yo. This is that you can't just like mix and match. No. They have to be certain pieces. There's a lot of people who thought that when we traded away RJ and quickly for OG, they thought that was a terrible move. But those are people that didn't understand basketball, and we now know that was a very, very good move stylistically for the Knicks. It's just the hard part of trying to make sure that we can get these guys to stay on the floor. And some of that is you got to look at the right type of guy. We got to give OG. We're at a point where we pretty much have to give OG a big contract. OG's been hurt his whole career. Okay. It's not just since he's been to the Knicks. He's always getting dinged up. So that's something, man, that we got to try to address, or maybe he's just one of those guys. And if he's one of those guys, can we be smart enough to say, you know what, we can't give this guy this huge money? I don't know. That's for people smarter than me decisions, to make that decision. But at the end of the day, you can't go out here and make the knee-jerk move now. We've put ourselves in a position to not have to do that. And we've seen this organization do that over and over again throughout most of my adult life. So I'm hoping that they don't regress and do something like that again.
My thing about not giving OG the money is that at that point it's a PR nightmare getting rid of those two guys that you got rid of for a rental. I don't know. And I think and I don't know how the whole like birds rights goes. I think someone said that the Knicks have the birds rights on his contract, whatever that means. I think they have the
it just allows us to go over. It allows us to go over the cap.
Okay, I see. So I mean that's going to be a whole news story within itself. I think it's going to happen. I don't think that Leon Rose makes that move, regardless of however many minutes that OG Anunoby plays or games he's played since he's been a Knick. I don't think that impacts. I think that the Knicks made that move with full intentions of bringing him back. That's just what my impression is. I have a weird, like, hindsight is always 2020 type question for you. Do you think the right play would have been at the deadline to get? Well, I can't say that definitively because you got a 2-for-1 package with Bogey and Alec Burks in the same trade. But the Bruce Brown fit for this type of series would have been kind of cool for the Knicks, I think. Like that would have been kind of perfect for this type of series against the Pacers.
I think, yeah, a guy like him could have helped. I also think just a healthy bogey could have helped. You know what I mean? How much would he use a healthy bogey with this kid? And then especially Alec Burks playing the way that he did, because he played so badly once we got him. So at the end of the day, if you have a healthy bogey plus Alec Burks playing like this, is that as much or less than a Brown? So it's at the end of the day, man, like what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Like, that's such a hindsight is, it's such a looking back and hoping. You never know, man. Who knows how that would have went? Who knows how well he would have played during the last part of the season? If we win or we lose an extra game, we don't even get the second seed. Who knows? Who knows?
What do you think? What do you think of this comment by Ricardo in regards to Mitch's contract versus Hartenstein? Because I think that if you are trading a player in this offseason out of anybody on this team, it definitely is Mitchell Robinson. But who is going to take that on? And I mean, I just can't see anybody willing to take that on. Now, I don't know how this works in the NBA because obviously in MLB, we're Mets fans. We have Steve Cohen paying off some contract money off of these guys to just offload them. I don't know if the NBA is similar with the NBA cap being a little bit weird, like you said. So I'm not sure if that's even an option, but I agree with you. In a perfect world, if this was presented to me, I would do this, man, because I love Mitch. I think he's great, but like what we've seen consistently early on in his career so far, I don't think that's ever going to change with his size, with his stature. I don't think it's going to change. So I think you agree because I think we've talked about this before. But what do you think about this?
Oh, I think if you have to make a choice, then Hartenstein is the clear choice. But I also think that first of all, I don't see too many teams really wanting to take on Mitch's contract. It's not huge, but it's enough, and it's got a couple more years left on it. And the guy's oft injured, so I don't know if we're going to be able to unload him just for that fact. But also, again, everybody always wants to talk about like the things we need to do, but then they don't talk about what's the alternative. Okay, so who's your backup center? You want to say, we'll just bring somebody in. I don't know who that just somebody is. And if we're just bringing somebody in, if they're any type of decent, they're going to cost some money. And if it's not bringing somebody in, then you're telling me that Achua or Sims are getting all your minutes at the backup five. And, we've got a whole season to play. So you're just banking on the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein is absolutely going to be 100% healthy for the entire season and playoffs. It's so easy. This ain't live, yo. Like who's playing backup then if we get rid of Mitch? Who's our backup five?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is all what ifs at the end of the day. This is all what ifs. Like you got to have that backup center because we just saw exactly in this playoff run. Obviously, Precious Achiuwa was great when he got here, but there's only so much he can do as a 6'8" power forward against opposing centers. So that's not going to work for the long haul. But I think that obviously, listen, I trust in Leon Rose 100%. I think that's what it boils down to. You either trust in Leon Rose and what he's done to bring this organization back to being relevant, right? In the last 5 years, ever since Julius Randle walked in those doors, or you don't believe in him and you don't believe in the process, you don't trust in the process, etc. So it's just a matter of fact. I know that this Knicks fan base is going to have a lot of Twitter wars with each other, and I'm not going to get in the middle of it because I have no energy for that because this is just something that is just going to go on until the Knicks finally raise a banner, and everybody is just going to have to just go and give their opinions and takes on it. And that's it. So what else we got? Of course, we'll have the regular trolls here saying excuses. We got you. Don't worry. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your viewership. What else do you have here, Nick? I mean, we've exhausted a lot of things here. This game was just ugly. Pacers are advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. Halliburton, you got to give. I don't care what you say as a Knicks fan. He played great today. Halliburton played good today. Pascal Siakam, a huge deadline acquisition for them, played great today. You look at the field goal, just look at the field goal percentages across the board from the starting lineup for the Pacers. There's really no beating that, man. How do you beat that? And there was a flash of brilliance in that third quarter with the defense of intensity that I saw from the New York Knicks. And in those two turnovers, just absolutely killed it, man. It's painful.
especially with that second turnover, obviously leading to Jalen Brunson breaking his hand. I mean, once that happened, I mean, listen, I'm not saying if he stayed in the game that we were definitely going to come back. It was already ugly at that point. But I mean, 12 points in an NBA game is clearly something, something that you could possibly come back from. But at the end of the day, once he gets hurt, the game's absolutely over at that point. And it's really, really, listen, 4 of our starting 5 didn't from the beginning of the season, didn't finish the season healthy. That's a tough one to deal with. I thought that the Pacers came out and they played aggressive today. They came out and they, came out with a certain level of intensity at the very beginning. And therefore, we had a tough time. OG came out, he tried, but obviously he was never, ever going to be able to, make a real impact in this game. He could barely move. I honestly even kind of question the fact that we even had him out there in the first place. I know he had a couple shots, but if this guy can't go into a 75% sprint, then what's he really doing on the floor in an NBA game? And I just thought that, at the end of the day, we in both this game and the last game, forget all the injuries. When the game first started, we did not come out with the type of intensity that we needed to. And I think that once Josh Hart got injured and he wasn't able to impact the game as he does, at that point, you're now looking at 6 players who, who basically aren't available or have the ability to, get to give the impact that they typically do. And 5 of them can't even be on the floor. I mean, listen, I do realize that there's nothing going on in Indiana and they probably have no type of, content creators or anybody talking right now. So people over there are just like looking for somebody to talk about anything because, as opposed to, going outside and, petting their pet cow. But at the end of the day, like, it's just, we lost, man. We lost. We ran out of gas. We lost. We had a lot of injuries. It's an unprecedented amount of, and no team's ever gotten to this point and had this amount of injuries. So it is what it is. We retool. We come back stronger. We lost. Indiana deserves the credit. Hey, they can only play who gets put in front of them. And, they got fortunate. They played the Bucks without Giannis and without Dame for a lot of the series, and they played the Knicks without 75% of their, rotation players. So, hey, good for them. They get on to the next round, and we'll see what happens with them against Boston. But it'll be an interesting offseason. I hope it's pretty quiet, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's it. That's really all there is to it. I think someone made the comparison of the 2021 Atlanta Hawks playoff run, comparing that to the Indiana Pacers from this season. I thought that was pretty perfect. But yeah, Nick is fresh. You know what? Nick is fresh, Josh. And Josh, you should be getting ready for your Nuggets playing in Game 7 here, because that's coming up in I think in an hour and a half. So, how are you feeling about that, Josh? How are you feeling? That's going to be interesting, man. Anthony Edwards is going off. I love like the cockiness or just like the confidence that he displays out there, Anthony Edwards. He's a great player, man. Josh is terrified. I would be too. I'm not gonna lie to you. That Timberwolves team is sneaky. That Timberwolves team is sneaky. So, no, that's it. I got nothing else, man. Pacers are advancing. Knicks are going home. We pray for better times. We pray for a lack of injuries next season. We pray for health. And that's it. And we pray for the bench to get a little bit deeper. And they will by default when obviously all the personnel are out there. Like you said, Julius Randle pushes Josh Hart out. Obviously, we'll see what the Knicks do. Are the Knicks going to feel panicked to go out there and get a star, or are they not? That's really the question. And we're not going to have the answer to that. We could talk about Paul George. We could talk about Donovan Mitchell. We could talk about Devin Booker. We'll get there. I promise you. I'll be on here on this podcast. I'm sure Nick will be on here as well. Subscribe to Nick's channel, by the way. Hit that subscribe button on the He Did This To Me podcast. The link is going to be in my description down below. Subscribe here as well if you're new here. Regardless of what type of fan you are, subscribe to the channel. He Did This To Me. Down in the description down below. Does his own Knicks content, his own Mets content, all that good stuff. Great conversations over there. Make sure you go subscribe. Hit that thumbs up as always. This is going to be the last time we're signing off for the True Knicks Talk post-game show, but I will have off-season coverage on my channel as well. We'll be talking Knicks basketball, see what kind of moves they make. So that's really all I got. like you said, I don't have a hat on, but hats off to the Indiana Pacers, shooting absolutely historically from the field and behind the three-point line before they kind of cooled off there in the second half. But that really just wasn't sustainable for the New York Knicks to try to outmatch and compete with, especially with the lack of guys out there and the lack of personnel. So that's it for the True Knicks Talk postgame show. Final thoughts here, closing statements, Nick, before we get on out of here for the last time of this 2023-2024 series or season, sorry.
I'm proud of this team for how they fought all season. They continue to give the effort, down to the very last drop. And at the end of the day, they never made excuses. They continued to, come out and say, hey, we have enough and we got to be better. And anybody with a brain or with eyeballs could see that at the end of the day, guys got, we just too many guys went down, man. Too many guys went down. And, I can't wait to see what this team can do to have a 50-win season and to get within a game of the Eastern Conference Finals, considering the adversity that we dealt with all year. It's just, it's a tough way to end the season. But when you look at it in the totality, you got to be proud of these guys and what they did. And it's another stepping stone and another building block to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. I appreciate you. That's it. That's it for the True Knicks Talk postgame show. We'll be back on here, obviously, in the 2024-2025 season. A lot of off-season content coming on the channel regarding our New York Knicks, but this is the final sign-off here. I think that we both, want to just shout everybody out that's been regular listeners to this podcast, to these live streams. Obviously, Nick, it was a great time doing this with you as well. Obviously, if we get some news here about the New York Knicks in the offseason, hopefully we can do some conjoined content as well on both of our channels. But it really was awesome to get you on here consistently right around the middle of the season, man. This has been going on since about January when you first came on here, maybe late December, somewhere around that time frame, if I remember correctly. So awesome to do these streams with you. Great just ball knowledge in general, not only here, but everybody who tunes in here regularly, not just the first time listeners that want to come on here and troll us, which is okay to enjoy your victories before you go get beat in Boston. But nonetheless, like I said, always a pleasure. We'll see you here soon. Let's go Knicks. Very proud. Like I said, I'll say this one more time. Very proud of this season, regardless of the outcome. Very proud in the face of adversity. And like you said, maybe the fans made some excuses, et cetera, but this team, these players never made those excuses, and that's what matters the most. As always, appreciate you all joining in. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand corner as you watch this. Join the channel memberships as well. Those are live and active as well for your viewing, and see you all in the offseason. Let's go Knicks. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Knicks Talk podcast. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more Knicks content.